Alex, I really wanted to get a little bit to your personal story because it sounds like it's very formative to who you are and also your experience with all of this. One thing that really strikes me about your personal story is that you were born in the Soviet Union. You know, my father and my grandparents were born in Cuba, but the Soviet Union, is a whole nother larger, entity and nation and empire in some places. And yet you now have spent most of your time working in Silicon Valley for some of the list of companies I mentioned earlier, and now over a decade at Cisco. And when we talk about innovation, one thing that seems to spark in our heads is the idea of change. And as you mentioned in your book, the place you were born, the USSR, no longer exists. Of course, the geography and the people exist, but the government itself is completely different, and there's a radically changed economy. Can you tell us a little bit about the contrast of being born in a place like that? I think you were there through your teens, and now living and working not only in the United States, but perhaps at the most innovative place on the planet, Silicon Valley.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey, right? And if I think about kind of the two things, if I think about Silicon Valley, right, I think I don't know what the official statistics are, but I think most of the people in Silicon Valley were born somewhere else, right? Be that in another country or in another city or another state, right? So if I think about what makes it a special place is the fact, and that hotbed of innovation is really the inclusion and diversity. It's the fact that there are a lot of people that come there and that are willing to challenge the norms. And I think when I came to the United States, frankly speaking, I wasn't the one challenging norms. The norms were challenging me. Just because it was a radically different experience, and it was radically different experience for socially, and for one simple reason. Despite having an A+ in the Soviet school for English, when I came to the United States, I quickly realized that I actually cannot speak the language. I could understand some of it, but I definitely cannot speak it. So, which kind of prompted me to. I still wanted to have some social activity and stay connected. And somehow, just at that time, the internet was the World Wide Web was starting. There was a Usenet. There were a lot of ways to communicate with other people through and kind of hide behind the computer screen with limited English language and check the dictionary before typing. And I think that is what played a pivotal role in me embracing the technology and staying with it. I would have never thought that I would have been in technology. I thought I would go into public service like my dad. So it's an interesting turn of events. And then maybe the second one, it's when we think about disruption, right? Disruption can come at any time. And look, the fall of the Soviet Union is a great example. We can argue about whether or not that was predictable or forecastable, but at the end of the day, it just happened practically overnight, and that's an interesting observation that stayed with me for the rest of my life.
Now, have you been back to Mother Russia in recent years?
Oh, yeah, I've been over the last 25 years or 30 years. I've been in the U.S. I've been coming back and forth, and I stay connected culturally, certainly to the music and the books, and my son and I are listening to Russian rock and roll, which is a pretty neat music genre.
Yeah, well, Russia has an amazing culture, and as you mentioned, the music, the literature. I mean, it's just such a very deep and great culture. Obviously, there were many problems with the Soviet Union and the large authoritarian government, of course. But what changes have you seen there since the fall of the Soviet Union? I mean, like you mentioned, it seemed to happen overnight, but since that time, they obviously had to adapt. The people had to adapt. There was lots of changes, especially to the economy, hopefully for the better. But even with better changes, there's always disruption. But what have you seen compared to when you left there as a teenager?
And it really goes back to the inclusion and diversity, right? Because when the Iron Curtain is gone, right? We are connected to the rest of the world, right? We around the world we may not see eye to eye on different issues, or we have different customs and traditions, right, or different economies for that matter. But I think when people are connected to each other, magic happens. And I think the reason that Russia is a very different country is because people travel, people are connected, and again, we have the power of the internet where we're all connected and we can learn from each other. And living in a different country still follow literature or music or other things.